Imagine thinking that Adam Gase was the right man for the job. Imagine thinking to yourself, hey, we're going out there to find a new head coach, and you settle on Adam Gase. Well, certainly the ringing endorsement that Peyton Manning gave him to Jets ownership certainly probably swayed things significantly, but just imagine that for a second. You wonder why a team ends up in the second overall spot in the draft. It's when you hire a failed head coach with a history of pissing off key players like Adam Gase with the Miami Dolphins to then not even wait for the guy to have a year off or a year away or to rebuild his image or rehab himself or get better or improve. You immediately thought he was the right guy. We got to bring him in right away, right after he'd been fired. You dumb dicks. In this same decade, you just saw this crap happen with Rex Ryan. When you fired him, the Bills immediately brought him in, and what happened? Same type of crap. Ryan was better, obviously, than Adam Gase's performance the past 2 years, but same ultimate result. And every time you turn around, it's like another Jets player's pissed off because Adam Gase doesn't know how to interact with people. He doesn't know how to talk to people. That's what led to the big Jamal Adams trade before the season. And that's where people started to really think that the Jets were in on it for the tank this year. Because you're trading away your best player on defense. You're trading away your one true kind of franchise player. Sure, getting future draft pick capital is nice. And it saves you cap space. But you've had enough draft pick capital over the years. You've had enough cap space over the years. And you still don't know what the hell you're doing with it. So what the hell difference does it make? Right? So the Jets, you go into the season, and it's obvious early on just how really, truly god-awful bad they are. And you're thinking, okay, they're the runaway favorites here. Yeah, Jacksonville's in the midst, but the Jets are going to Jets, and they're going to go 0-16. They want their own slice of Americana history, and they want Trevor Lawrence. They want that number 1 overall pick. And all the while, they have traded away Jamal Adams before the season. They released Le'Veon Bell during the season. They slow played it with Sam Darnold and even insisted on starting Joe Flacco more games than they really needed to because Sam Darnold was hurt. Bullshit. So they go and start off 0-13. Like, this is the goal that you've had. Yes, you fired Greg Williams, but you kept Adam Gase. You kept Adam Gase the whole season. The only reason you would do that is you were afraid that firing him, your team might win a couple of games. There's absolutely no defense or justification based off of the way the season was trending that if you truly cared about winning or wanted to put out the best possible product you had, even with the shit show you were, that you would retain Adam Gase. That's stupid. They retained him the entire year. Because reasons. And you know what those were. They were trying to finish the job. They were trying to go the distance. And at 0-13, it sure as hell looked like they were going to. You know, even when you go back to the Raiders game, like letting Henry Ruggs with all that world-class type speed get deep on you because you're running an all-out blitz. Like, that's a commitment to the tank that even the Jags got to throw up some mad props and respect to. Well, what happened? You let Adam Gase linger around too long, and that motherfucker potentially impacted your organization for years. The Jets go on to win 2 meaningless games, lose the rights to the number 1 overall pick. The Jets set out to tank. We're in the tank. Tanked very well. And then just as they were closing in on the finish line, the Jets, the whole damn Jets plan up. That's so perfect. Now, sure, in a class that looks good at quarterback, being at the number 2 pick isn't the worst thing in the world. I would grant you that. And for Jets fans that are worried about, well, we might miss out on Trevor Lawrence, hey, you've had other times in the past where those once-in-a-generation type of quarterbacks either A, haven't been all that, or B, haven't even been the best quarterback in their class. You know, the Colts had Peyton Manning in 98, and all the great, wonderful things that he did, and he achieved, and he accomplished. He only won 1 Super Bowl there in his time in Indy. They got Andrew Luck in 2012. They didn't go to the Super Bowl with him, not a single time. They drafted John Elway in 83. And yes, he eventually got traded to Denver, but it took until 97 and 98 seasons Elway's 15th and 16th in the league respectively when he was a diminished player playing around much better teams that he finally won his 2 rings. And all the while, Elway wasn't the best quarterback in that class. Dan Marino was, and he was picked towards the end of round 1, right before Dale Green. And you also had another Hall of Famer taken in that draft in frickin' Jim Kelly. So the point I'm making here to Jets fans that are all despondent because they lost out on the number 1 pick, you have an organization like the Colts that 3 times in the previous 30-plus years had a once-in-a-generational type of prospect, and they've got 1 championship out of it. Elway was so goddamn special, but Marino was better, and Jim Kelly was a Hall of Famer. Peyton Manning was great, absolutely, and clearly the best quarterback in the 98 class. But you could go throughout history, and you can point to a lot of times that just because a quarterback's taken number 1 doesn't automatically mean that he's going to be a stud by any stretch of the imagination, nor does that necessarily mean that that was the best quarterback taken in that draft. Like 2018's draft, Baker Mayfield went 1, and to me, he's the 3rd best quarterback in that draft behind Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Trubisky, God knows, he was taken 2nd overall in 2017, and Mahomes and Watson were taken after him. Goff and Wentz were the top 2 quarterbacks taken. They went 1 and 2 in 2016, and Dak Prescott in the 4th round is clearly the best of them. Go back to 2012 with Andrew Luck. Tannehill was taken 8th overall in that draft, and he's still in the league, playing relatively well. And by far the best quarterback out of that draft class was taken in the 3rd round. That's Russell Wilson. So while fans, it's easy to talk about, losing and tanking because our jobs, our careers, our livelihoods aren't on the line, anything like that. There is something to be said about getting that higher draft pick capital, puts you in a better position. That's absolutely true. But don't let that be the doomsday scenario that you might have missed out on Trevor Lawrence, because there is a chance he's not the top quarterback in this draft. And you will be positioned to get that guy. So you got to do it. Is it really worth talking much about this team this year? Offensively, they sucked. They couldn't throw the ball. They were dead last in total yards, going back and forth between Sam Darnold and Joe Flacco to come back to Darnold. And, it's a tough spot for Darnold to be in. They bring him in and draft him and then don't really build up the team around him. Like, how successful do you expect a guy to be? And then defensively, a team that has invested so heavily in defense over the years, especially with draft pick capital, but even cap space and free agency and so forth, like their defense was 29th against the pass and 25th in total yards per game. So they're bottom of the league type of unit. Like, you say to yourself, how does that happen? Why are the Jets so bad? Well, let's look at this. Similar to Jacksonville, it's all about the draft. That's where it starts. You could sit there and point to, well, it starts with hiring bad general managers and dumb dick coaches. That certainly plays a role, and they are a part of that draft process. But I'm thinking from a player manifestation standpoint, look at the first-round picks since 2011. Muhammad Wilkerson, Quentin Coples, D. Milner, Sheldon Richardson, Calvin Pryor, Leonard Williams, Deron Lee, Jamal Adams, Sam Darnold, Quinnen Williams, Mekhi Becton. Okay. Wilkerson was certainly a very good player for them for a long time, but no longer with the team. Coples, total bust. Milner and Richardson, Milner, absolute bust. Richardson was a good player, but again, no longer with the team. Calvin Pryor was a bust, no longer with the team. Leonard Williams has had his best play, I think, actually, for the Giants across town, but again, no longer with the team. Deron Lee, yeah, exactly. Jamal Adams, stud, traded away for future draft picks. Who knows what they become? But again, another guy, not only a defensive player that was taken in the first round, but also not with the team. So even if you sit there and say, looking at all those guys, like those guys from 2011 to 2017 that they took in round 1, who's even left? And an overwhelming investment on the defensive side of the ball for their defense to not be elite. And then when you do finally draft a young quarterback, you give up 3 second-round picks to move up from 6 to 3 to go get Sam Darnold, then you get the wrong fucking guy. You might have been better off staying at 6 and taking Josh Allen. Imagine how much differently you'd be thinking about the Jets now. You'd have all those extra draft picks, and you'd have the by far better quarterback in Josh Allen. Or you maybe should have traded up. You know what I mean? Like, it's those key decisions. It's the botching consistently in the draft. It's hiring bad coaches, hiring bad general managers. That's why the Jets consistently find themselves in this position. So what do they do now? First thing, you got to make your decision on who your next head coach is going to be. This is a team that you can sit there and say has about $65, $70 million in cap space, I believe, as of right now. So there's some appeal there in the open market when you're competing against other teams to bring in the best head coaching candidates. Like, some people are going to want this job. They certainly are. You're in a big media market, low expectations because the Jets stink. So if you come in and you're just better than Rex Ryan, you'll be like a god and you'll have plenty of job security. You have the number 2 overall pick to work with and 2 first-round picks. If you remember, they've got Seattle's from the Jamal Adams trade. You've got 2 thirds because you've also got Seattle's 3rd-round pick, 2 fifths. So you're talking about a team that's got plenty of draft pick capital. They're in an elite position in terms of the draft, in terms of where they're selecting, cap space, draft where you could potentially get a franchise-changing quarterback. Like, not a bad spot if you're a new head coach coming into the fold. But the first thing they got to do is make their decision on Sam Darnold. Do you pick up his 5th-year option? Do you trade him? Do you release him? Now look, I think releasing him is dumb. No reason to do that. The part about keeping him, like, I'm not here to blame Sam Darnold for what's went wrong with Sam Darnold. There are much bigger factors at play. It's a perfect example of when you bring a young quarterback into a situation where he has idiots coaching him and you don't build up a good infrastructure on offense around him, that quarterback inevitably is going to take too much on their shoulders, which means they're going to make too many bad decisions because they're trying to force things and make things happen to live up to the expectations and pressure. They're going to have a lot of turnovers, lots of bad plays to go with some of the big and spectacular plays, and that's exactly what you got. And you also got Darnold hurt a few times because his protection was so shitty. So, I'm not sitting here to say that it's Sam Darnold's fault, but if you're the Jets, you absolutely must move on from Sam Darnold. You do not pick up that 5th-year option. That's foolishness. If you believe that one of these quarterbacks in this draft can be that dude, then you must wipe the slate clean. Because otherwise what you're talking about here is you're tying the new regime, the general manager that's in there now, and the new head coach to somebody else's quarterback. Does that make any sense whatsoever? When he has shown you nothing in 3 years to absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, erase any doubt that he could be that dude. He hasn't. So you want to sit there and pass on the opportunity to draft a young quarterback? That could be your own choice, your own guy, and you ride or die with him, and instead you want to go with a previous regime's failed quarterback? That makes no sense whatsoever. Period. No. You decline the 5th-year option. You can have Sam Darnold in the fold. If somebody wants to come in and trade for him, then let him do that. If they say, hey, pick up that 5th-year option because that might give us 2 years of control on him, we want to go ahead and trade for him, then that's a different conversation. But let's be clear. Jets fans should know this by now. It's not to say that you think Sam Darnold sucks or that he's a bad kid or didn't work hard or anything like that, or that he wasn't totally screwed over by the situation. He was. Let's be clear. He absolutely was. However, this is the time that you have to hit the reset button. You have to go out there and get that young quarterback that also is going to give you even more years on a team-friendly contract at the quarterback position. Darnold's at the end of his window. That kid that you take number 2 overall, whether it's a Fields or a Wilson or whoever the case it might be. You're talking about you've got another year, 2, 3 on top of what Darnold would potentially have of extra team control. So why in the hell wouldn't you do that? And potentially get a guy with even more upside. You do that, take advantage of the draft pick capital, and then, unlike what you've done for the past decade plus, which has continued to persist in being dumb dicks and heavily and lopsidedly investing in the defensive side of the ball, you go build up your damn offense. Go get the young quarterback and then build up around him. If the Jets take one defensive player before the 5th round, everybody involved in that organization should be immediately fired. Learn the lessons from Sam Darnold. Learn the lessons of Jets teams gone by in the past decade. And get the young quarterback and then build the hell around him. There is no other way. Because if you don't do it that way, I can guarantee you this much, you'll be talking this same tank shit in another 2 or 3 years and it'll become a vicious, never-ending cycle.